In this package is a copy of the worst video game ever made. A game so bad that it almost fully wiped out the gaming industry in the 1980s. Learning more about this game taught me a lot about the gaming industry and why it takes so long for modern games to get developed. A few weeks ago, I was playing one of my favorite games, GTA 5. I realized that I've literally been playing this game for 10 years now. I've been starting to wonder though, when will GTA 6 finally come out? Well, I looked into it and it turns out that GTA is not the only franchise that has a problem with slow video game releases. This chart shows the top 50 games ever released. At a glance, you can see that most of the top games were released between 2005 and 2015. This was a big boom with tons of titles coming out for various new consoles as the tech got better and better. But once you zoom into the last 10 years, you can see how big the drop-off of blockbuster games has been. It seems like lately only a couple of major games are getting released every year, compared to the hundreds from just 20 years ago. Now, obviously I wanted to know more about what caused this slowdown in game releases. Well, after a bit of research, I came across this game. The year is 1982. Everyone is rocking mullets and neon while a new movie is tearing up the box office. E.T. the Extraterrestrial was a blockbuster on its opening weekend, quickly becoming the highest grossing film of all time, a position that it actually held for over 11 years. Now, in the early 1980s, home gaming was just starting to blow up. So seeing how successful the movie release was, Spielberg said he wanted a video game made for E.T. as well. A month later, Atari won the rights to the video game negotiations and decided they'd put together an E.T. video game in the next 5 weeks to meet the holiday rush. Atari had very high hopes for this game after the success of the movie, so they produced 4 million copies of E.T. If we're being honest, Atari had every right to have high hopes for this game. This was an all-time movie, so producing a video game under the same franchise should be a hit as well. But let's look at the bigger picture. The biggest game of 1982 up to this point was Defender, a very basic horizontal scrolling shooter game, nothing like the games we're used to seeing today. And before E.T., no one at that time had ever made a video game inspired by a movie. So we're talking about turning a 2-hour-long movie's story into a video game for a console that is designed for simple scrolling games. Oh, and they only had 5 weeks. Well, Steven Spielberg had a specific developer in mind for the game, Howard Warshaw. After a few weeks, Howard created a concept for a game where you played as E.T. You would explore the world to find 3 pieces of his phone to phone home. So yes, I bought myself a copy of E.T., but the reason this game is in my hand is not because it was a success. 700,000 copies of this game ended up in a landfill to prevent the meltdown of the entire gaming industry. And just with the basic information I gave you, I'm sure you can already see some red flags. It all started with the concept. When Warshaw pitched the game concept to Steven Spielberg, his initial reaction was, what about something like Pac-Man? In the early 80s though, Atari was one of the fastest growing companies in the world. They had the best-selling consoles and games of the time, and they felt like they had the golden touch where everything they put out would be a success. But rushing a game with this much attention was destined to be a failure. E.T. was released in December of 1982. At first, it was selling really well, reaching the top of the game sales charts for Christmas of '82. But as people started to play the game, word got out quickly. E.T. was super disorienting and hard to play. To collect the phone parts, the main goal of the game, you'd have to look in repetitive pits that your character would constantly get stuck in. And if you weren't getting stuck, you were searching and searching, only to find nothing. Navigating the map on its own was really confusing because of how weirdly it was laid out. E.T. had tried really hard to innovate, but they didn't take the time to make sure it was done well, so people just didn't get it. Once it was clear how bad this game was, stores started canceling orders and sales plummeted. So why did I decide to buy this game? I don't even have an Atari 2600. Well, believe it or not, this game has actually become a cult icon, and I see it as a symbol of how small actions can have huge ripple effects. Let me show you. The magic that got Atari to the top of the gaming industry was their innovation. Once they reached the top, they needed to find a way to stay there. So they built out a corporate team who identified that their growth came from just a few successful formats. They started to create a bunch of games within these formats to keep bringing in new revenue. Obviously, this was a terrible idea. Atari wasn't creating the same magic that had gotten people interested originally. Instead, they were just coasting their way through game releases without a direction or vision for the future. E.T. was just an insult to an already opened injury when people had been paying for game after disappointing game. It was worse than just that, though. In the early 80s, the Atari 2600 was the top console out of the half dozen other options that were on the market. Each console had its own library of exclusive games you'd have to buy as well. But investing hundreds of dollars into a console to find out that the game options suck, well, that's a huge trust killer. E.T. was the reason that a lot of people stopped buying games from Atari. And by the start of 1985, console and game sales had dropped by over 97%. The gaming industry was doing really badly, and Atari had 700,000 unsold copies of E.T. that they needed to get rid of. So they quietly buried them at a garbage dump in New Mexico. For years, Atari denied the rumors of burying the game, and E.T. kinda just faded into a distant bad memory. Years later, as the gaming industry recovered and eventually thrived, that rumor got people interested. So fast forward to 2013, and a Canadian company got the wild idea to look for the buried games. They contacted the landfill and got 6 months of access to hunt and find out if the rumors were true. Eventually, they found them. Atari had destroyed the games. And now to this day, that moment lives on as a fond memory of a dark time in the gaming industry. You see, I like to have sentimental objects, and this game symbolizes what happens when you get complacent. You can't think that what brought you to step 1 is going to carry you through to step 10. And the impacts that this game had go far beyond just the 80s. The reason that games take so long to make now is because innovation and improvement take a long time. Technology is better than it's ever been before, and expectations are getting higher and higher. To build the future, you have to break things and experiment. Looking back, E.T. was just a symbol of a time when making a quick buck was more important than innovation. So now that I have something to look at, I guess I'll just go back to playing GTA 5 and wait patiently while they make the next one. Hey, thanks for watching this video. Right now, I'm shifting the content on this channel to be focused more on the cool history that's shaping the future of tech and our world. If that's something you enjoy, definitely feel free to subscribe down below and then check out another video right here. I'll see you guys very soon.